Hello, hello, hello. Hello, hello.
Hey there, Coach.
Hi, how are you?
I'm doing good. How are you?
Okay.
6 weeks of not talking after.
Still multitasking. I got another meeting going on.
Oh,
But
wow.
no, it's not as bad as some days.
Yeah, we just, you know, we can open it yet, we don't start in 5 minutes.
Okay.
Is that all right?
Yeah.
You should be on Zoom for those
Yeah.
6 weeks. Since we-
Where's the town hall picture?
I think the CATV people haven't turned their camera on yet. I saw
Yeah.
people in town hall earlier.
Yeah, I did too. So they turned it on and then turned it off. So is the videographer there, Roy? Yeah, see, he turned the audio off. See, you can hear me, right? But I can't hear you. So okay. See, that was your audio, but there we go. Now he's got it. That's what was missing. The missing piece to the puzzle. So is that Nancy and Hava
Looks
that
like
I
it.
see? Okay. So we're going to be able to start on time. Russ will not be with us this evening. I spoke to him earlier today. So I see Peter and Hava and Nancy and Olivia. So we'll be able to go on time. So we had the first introduction of the budget today. 110 pages, 7.1 billion dollars.
Coach, can you hear us now?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Awesome. We're good to go.
So it was a fun earlier part of the day with that. You get number blind after a while.
It certainly sounds like a busy earlier part of your day. Wow.
Well, that was only a piece of it. We had 3 major pieces of legislation that went through. We're moving forward on the Truth and Reconciliation Commission. It'll be one of maybe 3 states in the country doing it. So it's
Super interesting.
We're
pretty
all set on
landmark
this
stuff.
end. Oops.
All righty.
Yeah, we got some principals have some time commitments, so.
Yeah. Okay, let's rock.
Yeah, we want to get Rick going.
All right. Okay, we're ready to rock and roll. I'd like to call the Hartford School Board of Directors meeting to order at 6 o'clock on the dot, according to this clock. March 23, 2022. And are there any changes, additions to the agenda?
No, sir.
Okay.
Move that we accept the agenda as presented.
Second?
So we have a motion and a second to accept the agenda as presented. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? So moved. So our piece of community engagement tonight is the delivery of our annual school ends policy reportings, school by school. So tonight we will have with us the high school and Dothan Brook. So Tom and Roy and Kathy, you have the floor.
All right, well, thank you. We're always excited for the this time of the year when we get to hear from the schools and see all the good stuff they're doing. Tonight, we're going to hear from Kathy Newton. She's going to give a little introduction to how we do the ends reports. And then we're going to hear from Rick Dustin Eichler, the principal of the Dothan Brook School, and then Nelson Fogg, the principal of the high school. The next community engagement will have the rest of the group do their presentations. But we appreciate Rick and Nelson being able to come tonight and get 2 of them done. Kathy's going to do a
Thanks.
quick introduction because we've been working on the ends all year, so I think everyone's pretty familiar with what we're doing.
Right, so just to start us off, keep going to the next one and the next one there. So just to remind everybody what our universal end is. And I'm not going to read it, but it's there. And so
Thank
we're
you.
going to go on to the next slide. And our district commitment, this has not changed from last year. So you'll find it in last year's presentation and then again this year, just to remind everybody, keep us focused. Next one. Our district shared vision. These are all of our belief statements so that when we think about our goals, we make sure that they're aligned with these shared vision statements. And then finally, our 2 goals still remain academic proficiency and safe and healthy schools. So what you'll hear tonight is how each school has attacked these or tried to address these in their year-long endeavors and how some of the evidence that points to these 2. And these 2 goals are also aligned to our ends. So on the next slide shows how our District 1 goal meets these specific ends, and the goal number 2 actually meets those ends policies on the right-hand side. So I'm going to let Rick take it from here.
All right, thank you for having me this evening. online people. Questions about your own. If you want to go to the next slide, that'd be great. Thanks, Roy. So this year has been really challenging, without a doubt. And, I think back to September, in some ways it seems like it was yesterday, and some days it seems like it was 6 years ago. And, we started the school year with high hopes, rolling out a new ELA curriculum, feeling like, hey, we may be wearing these mask things for a couple of weeks or a month, and then it could go away. And then the year happened. And it was much more challenging in ways that we could never anticipate. So just for example, we were not fully staffed at Dothan Brook until November 4th. Right, that was the first day I walked into the school, and we had all of our teachers in class. It was, it was challenging, right? And I really appreciated the leadership of the superintendent's office and the board, and having those community engagement meetings, excuse me, in November, and giving us the freedom to really explore everything that was going on, and the tools and the resources to do so. Things have gotten much better. It's been a challenge. We came back from January break, and it's like, well, not January, sorry, December break, and
In January.
And things were awesome. I met with Doug and Amelia, and they're like, how's things going at Dothan? I was like, it is incredible. And then COVID hit again, right? And we have days, with 14 people out. So I just to give you the context of that. So in here, you're going to see some data. It's flawed. Like it's not accurate data. I would like, can share a little bit about our panorama data. We don't have the data for the winter. It was in the middle of kind of our spiking cases, and we just didn't have kids and staff in the building to get it. So it's different. We have adopted one of the pieces that has gone really well is when we've adopted the EL, we also adopted the EL benchmark assessments. And so why that's important, right? Assessment drives instruction, right? We want to assess what we're teaching. And prior to this, we used the Fountas and Pinnell assessment, which was a good assessment. We still use it in spots, but it's a whole different philosophy. So Fountas and Pinnell, they're measuring levels of literature, right? They're measuring kind of benchmarks, A, B, C, D, how kids have progressed through. The EL benchmark really looks at kids' phonemic growth. So it's been really eye-opening, and that has changed how we look at assessments. And that's tied to a piece of EL that we've tried to continue on, which actually really fit well with our approach at Dothan Brook to begin with, called Skills Block, where we're getting kids individual instruction around their phonemic growth at their developmental levels, small groups, reading, books in hand. And that's been good. That's been a really nice change this year. One of the challenges with that tool that we're grappling with, which is why I don't have data from that, is we don't have grade levels. Like we're looking for growth for the kids. We're not looking at this kid is at a first grade level, right? So it's a growth model, which is awesome. So that all went on this year. That's been fabulous. Along with that, we've noticed a need for more interventions for kids who need more access to structured language programs. And so we've trained 2 additional teachers in the Wilson language program, which is a really intensive language program. So we've been doing that more this year. We also, our interventionists, April Thorburn and Nicole Bayloop, have been working their tails off for us. I had them pull their numbers. They have seen 90 kids since the beginning of the year in different groups. So that's, they're doing good work. They're meeting with their teachers. They're looking at the data. They're helping the teachers interpret the data. They're helping them understand our shift to really focus more on the systematic phonics approach to learning. And, that's been a really great growth area for us this year. We have continued to explore the EL curriculum. And, I brought actually some third grade writing, because for me as a principal, one of the best parts of the EL curriculum is the amount of writing the kids are doing. There's a lot of really good work to get kids getting their thoughts down on paper and really thinking about the structure of writing. So this is, do you mind if I just share a couple pieces of kids writing? Is that all right? So these are from third grade. This is, the date on this one is February 3rd. So about a month and a half ago, right? And it was part of a unit on frogs, which my daughter is in the third grade and she loved the frog unit. We learned so much about frogs, things that I never wanted to know about frogs. But what's interesting about these pieces and about the whole class's work in general is that they're different, right? You can just see from the length of the writing, right? They're different lengths, but all the kids are working on the same things and they're able to access that at their level, right? So here's the first one. They're all terrific. This is on the poison dart frog. Very popular frog. Frogs live all over the world and have different adaptations to help them survive. Awesome topic sentence, right? Third grader. The poison dart frog has several adaptations to help it survive in the rainforests of Central and South America. Building on it, evidence. They have toxic skin. It secretes poison that can kill and paralyze prey and predators. Right? Good evidence. Now for the closing. As you can see, poison dart frog's skin help their environment by acting as a defense mechanism. Okay. Awesome, right? So then building a little bit more, this is another one on the poison dart frog. I have been studying the poison dart frog. You can find this frog inside the rainforests of Central South America and Colombia. The poison dart frog comes in bright colors like red or like bright crimson, fire orange, and all the colors in the rainbow. Its predators are the frog-eating snake. This frog has a unique adaptations that help it survive. More of a good transition, I have to work on transitions to illustrate. The poison dart frog protects its young so it makes more of its kind. As well as the frog has bright colors so the predators stay away and pop out in the colorful environment. In the end, the poison dart frog has very poisonous skin, so if a predator eats or touches them, it will most likely die. Now here's the closing. Poison dart frogs have unique characteristics that help them survive in the rainforests of Central and South America. So you can see the structure, right? They're working on this. As they move to fourth grade, they're going to build this into an essay, and then further on. So really great stuff. There's been challenges along the way with EL, but it's really laid a foundation for our kids that we're going to build on next year. We have worked across, so this year, Doug and Amelia, if you're listening, I don't want to steal your thunder, but I'll add right here. So we developed an elementary school leadership team to bring more teacher voice into our decision-making process. And so their first task was to identify and adopt a framework for teaching practices that we're going to use as the basis for mini observations. So it'll be built into our PD system. So we did that this year. We wrapped up that work with them probably about a month ago in February. And so we adopted the 5 dimensions of teaching and learning. which we're really excited about. And then, at Dothan Brook, we were able to continue with our partnerships with BINs throughout the duration of the pandemic. And this year, we were able to get our Dartmouth volunteers back into the building. So we've had some after-school programming with our Dartmouth Growing Change group. And we've had America Reads kids back in the building, which is awesome. If you're in the morning, like flood into the halls and read with kids, it's beautiful. And we also were able to bring back SIBS, Big Brother, Big Sister, and a great program called Musical Empowerment, where Dartmouth kids mentor elementary school kids, and they get an instrument through it. So it's huge. They usually have, I don't think they're any of them this year, but they usually do a couple recitals every year, which is great. So things are like kids are learning even with all this stuff. So this is some of our STAR data. It's September to December. Our testing window is actually going on now, so I don't have current data for you. But in that roughly, because it's the end of December to the beginning, or end of September to the beginning of December, kids are making roughly half a year growth in that time, in those 2 months. So like they are progressing, they are learning, which has been really nice to see. Of course, we have SBAC coming up too in the coming up months, which is always a good, don't necessarily love high stakes tests like that, but they are a good indicator of where we're at. Right, so next slide, please. Right, so ends policy 2. So in response to the work, in response to the student needs that we had, especially at the beginning of the year, we worked with Tom, and we were able to bring in another kindergarten teacher to run a developmental kindergarten program, which has, we built it to be really play-based. We wanted the students to be able to develop those self-regulation skills. We wanted them to be able to, sit down. The space we used, we didn't put 8 chairs or desks in it. It was all floor time. So that's worked quite well to bring down some of the behaviors that we've had in kindergarten. These are our trends. This is kindergarten data. I know it's hard for you to see, but we were able to cut our unexpected our behaviors at the kindergarten level by about half by what we've done. Part of that was being fully staffed, I mean, to be quite honest. But the other half was that kindergarten program we brought in, Tom found some funds for us to be able to hire another kindergarten aide who, she's been fabulous with the kids. So that really made a difference. Through the ESSER funds, we brought in a behavior interventionist. I believe that happened at all 3 elementary schools and a middle school.
Mhm.
Like that. And that person, we used it. So I can talk for you hours about this, have me come back sometime, but there's a huge gap for kids who have large behaviors and who don't qualify for special ed. Right? It's a huge challenge with the way that we do funding in the state. But through ESSER, we were able to bring in a behavior interventionist. So we targeted some of those kids who struggled last year and who would have benefit from applied behavior approach. And that has been amazing. Like the number of kids is pretty small, but the impact has been great. Just kids who struggle to access in the classroom last year have done really well. They wrote about the poison dart frog. They wouldn't even pick up a pencil last year. So, so that has been a real boom. We hired a mental health clinician out of general ed funds through that. This is a Hartford-based position. Our goal for that position was to focus really on supporting kids at the targeted level. So kids who need a little extra boost, they need some extra supports to be able to access in the classroom. Because we did not have, it took a while, right? Well, we still don't have a full-time HCRS school-based clinician. And then we were able to be flexible. We brought in Susan Pullen from Deer Creek a couple of days a week, but we're far under capacity. So we ended up having to use her to work with some of our more intense kids, which wasn't the purpose, but it was the need. And she's been absolutely amazing, absolutely amazing, but we are looking to revamp and kind of relook at that job description to make sure she's where she needs to be. We've been working with a restorative practice coach. We've worked with him for the last couple of years, John Kidda, and really thinking about how we build restorative practices into our comprehensive behavior plan. So the goal there is, I know a lot of you may have heard this movement for non-exclusionary discipline by the state, which is, it's huge. It's a huge challenge, right? And I think it gets to the core for a lot of us. It's important, right? Because we know that relationships are what keeps kids in school, not being sent to the principal's office. Well, I am awesome, but so
And modest.
and modest. So really thinking about how we build that in, especially for our kids who have more, regular behavior challenges at school. And then we have 7 teachers now who are working with Ross Green's organization called Lives in the Balance, and they're doing collaborative problem solving training, which we started doing this thinking about like behavior plans for us in the past have been really teacher directed, really adult directed, and we want kids to be involved in the process. We want to be able to partner with them. And so their organization, you bring kids into what they call a Plan B conversation. So you collaboratively problem solve with them around what they need. So we're going to do one tomorrow for a kid who is struggling with anxiety around the concert, right? Upcoming concert. We haven't had a concert, and this kid is having a hard time around that. So we're going to ask him, why are you blurting out every time we want to have the concert? We start practicing our concert songs. What's up with that? And get his side, really develop some empathy, and then come up with a solution in partnership. So that's the goal. That's kind of the work that we've been doing in this area. Next.
Before we move on, could I just ask a quick
Yes,
question?
please.
I'm just curious about the time. My eyes aren't good enough to read that screen.
Mhm.
What month does that start in?
This is August.
August,
August,
March.
September, October, November, December, January, February. So that's
Thank you. My new glasses come next week.
My eyes aren't good enough either, but I got a screen
Oh, okay.
closer.
yeah, I know this. Yeah. I wanted you more to see the trend.
I see the trends. Yeah.
It's a pretty good.
I was sort of
cycle.
wondering what months your big spikes were. So
Yeah.
September, October.
September, October, yeah, and then we got staffing in November.
Yay.
All right, so looking ahead, we want to coordinate with the Hartford School District to evaluate our and revise our multi-tiered system of support. So how our kids who need supports moving through our system, right? We want to try to keep as many kids close to the classroom and getting their services in the classroom as possible, because we know that's where the relationships are. That's the power to keep kids in school long-term. So I look forward to that work with the school. We're going to continue to move forward with EL with a slight shift. We're going to focus really in on the high leverage practices that are embedded in that curriculum, which is exciting. And then the 5 dimensions of teaching that I talked about earlier, we'll be rolling that out, and those mesh really well with EL. So I know it looks like 2 separate things, but they really go hand in glove. We've got a full FTE instructional coach coming to Dothan for the first time in many years. So we're excited about them. Their initial work is going to be working with the teachers around team-based instructional coaching cycles. So really collaborative process, looking at the kid, looking at school data, looking at their practices and thinking about what they can tweak. Working on it, collecting data for a month, and then meeting again. So we'll probably use a program developed down at Harvard called DataWise as the foundation for that. We are again looking at really revising our PBIS programming. That's our behavior management programming, with 2 thoughts. One, we want to do behavior planning with kids. We don't want to do it to kids. So really trying to make that shift. And we want to bring down our evidence-based practices so that kids have access to them lower on our MTSS continuum, so they don't have to really have big behaviors or blow out of classes before they're able to access those supports. And then we met on this just today. Is it just today? No, today's Wednesday, yesterday. With the DBS leadership team to think about how we move our diversity, equity, and inclusion work forward. So our goals, and Maggie's going to help us flush these out over the remainder of the year. One is going to focus on family engagement, which seemed really important at this moment in history, and how we do that work. And then the other one, we want to start more of a pilot program with teachers who are interested around how we have conversations around, you know, cultural issues, race, diversity with our kids in a way where everybody feels safe and supported. So thank you for letting me go on first. Isaac, my son, has this middle school concert, right?
Right.
We haven't had concerts much, so I was excited to go to that, but appreciative to be here with you in person. Do I take questions?
Yeah, question.
Thank you, Rick.
Thoughts?
Question.
Where do the marshmallows come in?
Well, right, so,
Big marshmallows.
and this has been a challenge during COVID. Part of our school climate is community, like we have dance parties, we, you know, we have, you know, whole school movies where we sit down and get cozy on the gym floor. We bring the kids all out on the playground and play together. We have kickball games. We have little groups of kids cross grades that get together twice a month and talk and get to know each other. We haven't been able to do that as much. So the s'mores was just, what could we do fun that just brings everybody together in a way that's, you know, relatively COVID safe. We did this before, so we did a couple fire pits, we set them out in the front, you know, we roast marshmallows, we have fun, we invite the fire department, we invite the police department to come down and join us. Parents come, they, you know, they join us, we had the FedEx guy actually join us for a s'more. So.
Well, next time you have s'mores, I want you to invite the school board. Okay?
I didn't get invited either.
As long as I don't have to warn it as a meeting.
We'll schedule them one every 15 minutes or something.
Peter, you can't come in yet.
Yeah, not yet. We wait in your car.
I have a question. First of all, thanks for coming down and telling us all about this. You and your team are coming up with some incredible ideas on how to reach kids where they are and meet the need. And that's so inspiring to hear. I mean, a really big deal. You talked about sort of that gap between kids who qualify and kids who need. And I'm a little curious about what you see as being the barrier. You're having to overcome something, but what are you overcoming? Is it funding, staff? Is we just talking about dollars to be able to provide services? What's the barrier?
Yeah, so this is actually wrote a letter to our local senator.
Oh, all right.
Yes, yesterday on this. So long answer, but I'll try to be short and happy to talk to any of you more about this. So special ed funding, like, you know, we relied on special ed funding for a long time, and typically, not always, right, kids who had really challenging behaviors and had needed support with mental health well-being, they qualify for special ed, right? So we were able to access paraeducators, you know, have them have access to, you know, specialized instruction. You know, we use a program called Superflex, which is Michelle Garcia Winner's great program. Look it up. And I saw myself. And that worked well, but to qualify for special ed, there's a whole process, but the big part of it, you need disability, but you also need to demonstrate adverse effect. Like, it has to impact your learning in a core content area. And we're getting a lot of kids now who have significant mental health challenges, who are smart, who are so smart, right? So they don't qualify. We can't use special ed services for those kids, especially especially like paraeducators, like one-on-one, because they just don't qualify. So as a school district, we've had to be really creative in how we do this. And part of it with professional special educators, we can access something called the small group rule, so they can actually still get some of the special ed instruction around, especially, social communication. But, so to do that, we brought in BIs. We were able to work with HCRS and bring in BIs. Those BIs are subsidized, so that you get some money back from the state. We hired Jen Benedict, mental health clinician, to be in the school. When things are working well, we have a school-based clinician, right? HCRS has a limit on what they can do, right? They don't have the capacity anymore to serve the amount of kids who have needs in our building. And they have funding, so outpatient funding for them can't be used to help kids in the school. Where are the kids every day? They're in the school, right? But they can't do it. There's a barrier, that exists, it's an artificial barrier in my mind, but it's there, right? Like I had a talk with HCRS earlier this year, and they were awesome. Like there's no fault to them. They had a clinician who was sitting in their offices in Hartford. I had kids who had a need because we didn't have an unfilled position, and we couldn't get them together because they couldn't bill for it. Because that's wrong, right? So that's one problem with this, right? Two is the capacity, their capacity. So we've had to build it ourselves. When we build it ourselves, and Tom and I talked about this yesterday. When we build it ourselves, we are taking money out of the general education fund to support kids' mental health well-being, which we're not getting subsidized for like we would if it came through HCRS. Right? So it creates a great inequity between our schools because we need that. We value it. You have always valued that as a board. And that's why I'm proud to be here. Right? But for our schools who don't, like that money that we're spending on mental health supports, we could put that into academics.
Yeah.
Right? But we know if we don't put it into mental health supports, that those kids
Can't
won't access their academics, right? So it's a conundrum. But that's what I wrote to Senator Clarkson about. Like, that doesn't work. Like Hartford kids shouldn't be penalized because the board and the school district are putting money where it needs to be to help our kids. That's wrong. So I don't know if I answered your question. The answer is, I think that funding for mental health supports should come out of the school budget. Schools should still manage it like we're doing now, because I think we do a good job. But that shouldn't count against Hartford's kids.
So that the money should be coming out of the correct accounts and not out of the academic accounts.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Or it shouldn't count towards per pupil spending because that's where, our tax rates and everything are set.
Right.
So,
Well, thanks for that explanation.
yeah.
I really
And a
appreciate
lot of
it.
that's my opinion. So,
No,
I hope I didn't know.
No, I agree.
All right.
Yeah. And I think districts that have the resources or the mental health agency that can do more because they're in a more populated area or whatever their structure is, because it's very different from county to county. They benefit tremendously because the mental health center is supporting the kids and working with the schools, and the schools doesn't have to spend the education dollars on the mental health or not as much.
Yeah.
So there's an inequity there.
Yeah. And please say I don't think we're doing anything wrong. I think we're doing
No.
it right. I think we're 100%.
I hear that.
Right.
I hear that.
I do too.
It's a systems problem.
I hear that.
Yeah.
And I appreciate you helping us understand the glitch in the system.
All right.
Thank you
Can
for
we
having
let
me.
Rick
I'm gonna
run
run
up
up the
to
hill
the-
and go to the
To
concert.
the middle school.
Please
Please
when your
enjoy,
voice back.
please
Thank you.
enjoy it. Thank you for coming.
Thank you.
You ready for Mr. Fogg in the high school?
Yes, we are.
I feel like I constantly have to go to 2 places, which isn't really possible. I'm gonna ask actually if we could start with the district commitment slide. I wanna,
Go back to.
highlight a couple of things that Kathy said. And I'm gonna follow up a lot of what Rick said as well, obviously at a different level in terms of age, but sounds like a lot of the same confusion and a lot of the same conflict. One of the points that I'm going to try to make tonight is that I truly believe we're at a place in education where we need to significantly consider what we're doing and how we're doing it. And I'm not sure that we can continue to simply keep doing what we're doing and expect different results. A, and B, those results aren't working for all kids. So I'm going to start there. This is a phenomenal statement of the district's commitment, and I believe it to my soul. I've been here for 30 something years, a long time, and I feel very, very good about that. If you could go to the next slide, the vision slide. So one of the things that jumps out at me about this vision slide is the word all. It's really the first word in the statement. Then it shows up again a little bit later in the third bullet, all students. And I'd be lying to you if I was going to try tonight to convince you that we are succeeding in doing that. We're not. And I feel strongly that I have one opportunity a year typically to come and talk to you folks about what we're doing at the high school to achieve these things. And what I hope that you leave tonight after I'm done, if I've done my job, is a sense of where are we doing it well? And what do we need to do it different? When I talk about having a different school, what am I talking about specifically? So thank you for that. Now we can jump ahead to the far too wordy Wilson slides. Oh, that's right, light too. So the first goal obviously is academic achievement. And I will throw some information out there to you. One of the forms of evidence that we talk about when we look at that goal is the level of participation that's occurring in the school. And despite COVID, absolutely in spite of COVID, our participation rates are as strong as they have ever been. And we had very high participation in the fall and the winter in terms of athletics. And this spring, we're seeing levels of participation in our athletic programs beyond that, which we, to my knowledge, ever seen. The numbers are through the roof, to the point where we're having to consider adding teams, which is a good problem to have. Our performing arts continue to be very strong. We did a musical, we did a one-act performance as well, and there were somewhere between 40 and 50 kids involved in those performances. We have clubs which continue to meet after school and actually during something that's now called Block 5, and that's bringing some kids. There's a group of kids, for example, who do Dungeons and Dragons and sort of a self-created club that they have brought in. Our band and choir numbers, we have 51 students in our band and 46 students in our choir, both of which are as big as they've ever been. So in terms of engagement, we have a lot of students that are engaged in school. In terms of the courses that they're taking, students challenging themselves, again, the statistics are there, but for those that are maybe can't see from somewhere else, we have 215 students who are electing to take advanced courses, and they're taking many of them are taking multiple courses. We continue to have a significant number of students taking dual enrolled college classes. We have a significant number continuing to take AP classes. And we have 3 students this year, which I think is the most we've ever had, accessing the early college programs at CCB and at Norwich University. That, again, I want to keep coming back to this concept of two schools, right? For those students for whom school works, we are doing quite well. We continue to have our students who are college bound accepted at the schools that are appropriate for them that they want to go to. For students, when they take the AP test, continue to score 3, 4s, or 5s at a rate that is a little bit above the national average. Our students on the SATs, by the way, 65% of our eligible students sat for the in-house SAT today. Those scores, again, tend to be a little bit above the national average. They were last year, they have been over the last few years. Attendance and achievement at Hartford High School right now are very closely linked. Simply stated, and I know this sounds like a stupid thing to even say, if you come to school on a regular basis, you're going to do pretty well. As you'll see in the next slide, we're not there yet, but as you'll see in the next slide, 16% of our students in the first semester missed 20 or more days of school. That's 22% of the semester. That doesn't include the 14 students who chose to leave during the first semester without paying. So again, I'm trying to provide a balance for you here, right? And this is where I sit in terms of the balance, and I think it's important that you folks are aware of that as well. We've done a number of things with our staff to focus on relationships and on increasing engagement and support, and I think we've had some success with these. Our schedule this year is a little bit different than it has been in the past, based upon what we did last year, which nobody wants to revisit. But we did learn some things from last year's schedule that were important to us. And one of the things that we learned is that the time when we can support our students' academic, social, and emotional needs is better at the end of the day than the middle of the day. So block 5 has been a new thing this year. We continue to use our place-based learning practices through our Teton School partnership on a limited basis. We'd love to use it more, but again, it's been difficult to do the professional development that is required in order to truly implement the Teton School practices of place-based education. However, we have done a fair amount of it. I don't know if you folks are Instagram followers or not, but to my knowledge, and I've been around the town for quite a while, we created the first maple syrup from Hartford, our campus's trees that has ever been created. And not that it'll surprise anybody, but I thoroughly enjoyed the syrup on the pancake that we had last week. The students through their course learned everything from the very beginning to the very end, including the ultimate end, which is eating the syrup. And they had quite a bit of work that they had to do along the way, including figuring out how much syrup do we really, sap do we really need if we're going to sit and have a full morning breakfast with each other. We have 2 staff members who are doing regular, and really it's either weekly or every other week professional development in the morning with our staff. We have Tori Benson, who is regularly providing professional development on trauma-informed practices. Tori is one of our mental health clinicians. She puts out a topic each week, and people in the morning can go and participate in that. And Melissa Lyman, who's our Dean of CIA, regularly does instructional practice professional development in the morning. So our staff is getting from their peers pretty regular opportunities to learn from each other and from those two folks. Maggie Ibrahim continues to provide direction for our school regarding anti-racist, equitable, and inclusive instructional practices. And I think, I'm not going to speak for Maggie, but I think this year it's been a little bit like drinking from a fire hose for her. There's been a lot of work, much of which I'm not sure she sort of knew was going to be the case, but ultimately she has embedded within our school a recognition that we need to get better around anti-racist, equitable, and inclusive classroom practices, and we continue to do so. We have stuck our toe more than we had in the past in the proficiency-based instructional practices and assessments with regular ed classes, and along those lines, we have increased the number of team-taught multidisciplinary courses that just kind of happen naturally this year, and they're formally a part of the program of studies next year. So again, the idea of doing the maple syrup is a perfect example of what can be done when you actually look at things from multiple lenses. I've said for years that school is the only place on earth that you can go to and do math and only math, and then do science and only science. When I talk about the changes that need to occur in school, that's one of them. I believe we need to start looking at a more holistic approach to the curriculum that we maybe have already. Second goal is health and wellness, and again, there's a lot here. I'm going to there's a link there that you can look at. You don't have to look at that, but I do want to spend a little bit of time on that first bullet. This is the winter panorama data. We do the panorama survey 3 times a year, I think. And this is the second version of it. If you're so inclined, you can look at the link, which is going to sort of show you over time where we have gone and what we have done. And what you'll see is there's not a significant difference over the past 4 iterations of the survey. It's a little deceiving, and I want to share some of that deceiving information with you. When we get the panorama data, we get it to us, and I'm going to use a term, it's not their term, but it's my term, sort of the cover sheet, and I've given this information in this slide. For example, engagement. 37% of our students in the winter survey indicated that they indicated positively for engagement. And we sort of look at that and we think 37%. That's not good enough. And I don't think it is good enough. However, when you compare that to non-urban high schools, the national number for non-urban high schools is 35%. This issue that we are dealing with schools is not a Hartford issue. It's a national issue. Nothing that I'm saying here probably couldn't be said almost anywhere else in the country. And when we look at these numbers, the school climate number for us is 53%. Again, positive rate of 53%. Nationally, it's about 50%. The school safety rate, appropriate to this slide, for us is 68% compared to nationally about 50%. Our students feel significantly safer than their national peers feel at a similar type of school. Now, am I happy with 68% positivity rate? Not really. But I also think it would be a little, I'm not sure it would be appropriate for me to expect that number to be 100% at this point. Sense of belonging in our school, again, the number for us suggesting positivity is 47%. Nationally, it's 40%. And the next one is just an amazing statement about our staff. The teacher-student relationship number for our school positivity rate is 72%. Nationally, that number is 52%. So when we think about, again, coming back to this concept, right? For a lot of our students, their relationships with their teachers are very strong. It speaks incredibly to, if we think back to what's happened over the last 2 years with our students and our staff, where we told them to go away and said, we're going to use this thing that we've never used before called Brook, in order for us to interact with each other in some meaningful way. And then last year we said, come halftime. And again, we're going to do this thing where we're going to use Google and we're going to, and then this year all of a sudden to have our students have a 72% positive statement around their relationship with their teachers. Again, we'd all like it to be higher, but when we compare it to what's going on nationally, it speaks volumes to the work that our staff is doing. We provide a tremendous amount of support for health and wellness through part of our school that we refer to as the Independent Learning Center, or the ILC. When a student is struggling in some way, we usually try to find a way to get them to the Independent Learning Center. There's a variety of things that happen in that space. One of the things that happens is if you're struggling with attendance, which often means, if you imagine what I said before around this 16% of our students missing 22% of semester 1. What do you do with it? When you and that, by the way, is just 20 days was chosen somewhat at random. We have students that have missed significantly more than 20. That's the floor of this statistic. What do you do with that student that hasn't been there for 4 or 5 days and then comes for a day and then hasn't been there for 3 days and then comes for 2 days? How do we continue moving them through their learning? And the Independent Learning Center and the folks that work there and some different ways of looking at school are doing that. and doing it successfully with a lot of our students. That's also where our individualized learning opportunities exist through student-created independent projects. Again, I harken back to the concepts of both the district commitment and the vision, both of which talk about personalizing learning, as does Act 77 and the concept of proficiency. We also do online learning in that space, and that's also where our community and work-based learning occurs. So it's a kind of almost a Swiss Army knife type space. You can walk in, sort of get your needs met wherever they happen to be. And next year, our hope is to expand upon that space, providing deeper services that I'm going to talk about in just a minute. Block 5 supports our academic, social, and emotional needs. And again, I mentioned that's new this year. We have, and through some ESSER funds and through support of our superintendent's office, purchased the services of a second mental health clinician this year. Right now, between Tori Benson and Christina Key, their caseload is over 70 students. We have about 500 kids in our school. 70 of them are currently accessing mental health supports of varying types. And there is, and I'm going to quote, I asked Tori for some information. I'm going to quote Tori. We have many students seeking mental health support who we are unable to serve if we're going to continue to serve those that we are currently involved with. Anxiety is real. Mental health concerns amongst our young people is very real. And when we start looking at this information and bringing some things together, when we start talking about attendance issues and school avoidance being a significant part of that, why are our students avoiding school? I've had this conversation with some folks. I think teens are hardwired to be social creatures. They want to be, if they're not coming to school, that's a pretty good indicator that something's not right.
Yes. Could you explain to our audience what school avoidance is? Because that's a whole different concept for a lot of people that they don't understand what that is. Please.
I don't know if this is going to be right out of somebody's textbook, but a lot of our students feel very anxious when they're in school for a variety of reasons. Sometimes it's the number of people. You have to remember, we've told kids for the last 2 years anyways, that if you go to school, you're not, we had classrooms last year where we removed all the furniture except for those desks that were needed. And often there were 6 or 7 desks in a room. Those kids who felt maybe okay coming under those conditions because they were coming for half the time, one day, not the day, but then the next day. It felt pretty overwhelming to walk into a classroom with 14, 15, 20 kids. So how do I, as a young person, knowing full well that I could have a panic attack in this space, I feel very uncomfortable. How am I supposed to learn? So let's sort of start there. And B, what options do I have? If that is, if my mental health is driving me in that way. So one of the things that I can do is I can avoid school. I can not go to school because school is the place where I know I feel anxious. We've been working on students, and again, we've got a student who we've worked with for a little bit who will get a ride with a parent in the morning. They'll be in their car and refuse to come in. So how do we transition that young person into the school? The Independent Learning Center does a phenomenal job with students, but it's in the building. If those students are going to access the Independent Learning Center, they've already crossed over that threshold. They've gone through and that barrier has been achieved. Our administrative team, our school counselors, and some of our sometimes our mental health clinicians have visited families at their homes this year at higher rates than we ever had. And we do that for a couple of reasons, not because we go to convince the kid that you need to go to school. But we do that to show that the student that we care about them. We know you haven't been there. But we care about you and we want to work together to find a way to get you back to school. And again, right now, that looks like back to a class of 15 or 20, and that's the kind of, that conversation is really difficult for students. And manifests often in, I'm just not gonna go to school. You know, we may be successful every now and again with a kid who wakes up and feels particularly strong that morning and they show up, but they're so far behind, you know, they're walking into spaces that they don't know what's going on. So their anxiety level, which is already of concern, elevates. We have to, and I feel comfortable with this district will, because I have confidence in us. It's something that is not just a Hartford issue at all. One of the things, and again, you've read it, I'm sure there's been an uptick in behavior referrals, somewhat antisocial behaviors. The number that's shared with you there is not as significant as it looks just because of the way we're keeping track now much more closely than we did in the past. But we work very hard in the administrative offices to use restorative practices. We very, very rarely, once a kid is in school, tell them that they can't be there. And we work with them while they are in the building to try to modify them, whatever the behavior happens to be. It's very, very relational. It's working with the student, it's working with the student's family members, it's forming a relationship with parents, and often with grandparents. It's getting to know these kids at a very, very fundamental level in order to support them being there and being successful there. Again, it's not a Hartford issue. We know that this is something that we're seeing nationwide. And I didn't want to avoid that when I talked with you too. I don't think it's a measure of negativity of our school. I think it is an absolute measure of the state that we're in right now. I mentioned earlier that we've had 14 students who left school without a plan this year. That is a high number.
Can you expand just a little bit about what that means? Does that mean more students have left school but have?
So 14 students, I'm hesitant to use the word dropout because that feels very permanent. And my sincere hope is that this isn't.
Okay.
So the way I'm choosing to look at it, which is a little different than the way we will look at the data at the end of the year, we have to submit it to the state. But we've had 14 kids who've chosen to take a break from their education formally.
Okay. Okay.
And again, I don't know if we could have done something different, had something different in place that would have impacted those 14 students. Impossible to know. I know that every single one of those students' attendance was an issue. And I know that every single one of those students had many adults in the building who were trying to partner with them about keeping them in.
Thank you.
Yeah. So I mentioned the Tale of Two Schools, just kind of what are we looking at in the future? And I think one of the things that I really want to hit home tonight about is our school is wonderful and works really, really well in its current state for many of our students. I don't want to change that. I don't want our teachers to have to change that. Our students are doing quite well, many of them. I referenced them in the first slide. So we're going to continue to tweak, perhaps look at our course of study, offer courses that are interesting to our students. Our students are in the process of scheduling themselves for next year right now, which is probably the most significant thing we do to personalize their learning. They say, this is what I want to take, and then we go out and we make it happen and build a schedule every single year with that in mind. We continue to use standardized testing. Our ninth graders are going to be taking, Rick mentioned the SBAC, they're going to be taking the SBAC shortly. We've had our sophomores take the SAT, our students, our juniors took the SAT, and we have a number of students who are going to be taking the AP tests on or around the beginning of May. Those scores will continue to tell us how we're doing with students for whom that that is where they want to be. So what I've done there is I've just sort of articulated what goal is this particular statement attached to. So that would be attached to goal 1, which is academic achievement. Goals 1 and 2, we need to increase the number of representative student voices in our school. I will say we haven't done a very good job of that. Olivia is sitting on the screen right now, and she obviously is a member of your committee and your board, and she and I meet every other week with Roy to talk about the things that she's going to be talking about with you. But we need to do that better. Our students need to see where their voice is, and we need to hear it. And allow that at some point to be our guide as to what we do in the future. We have to look at developing a wider array of activities specifically for students who have traditionally been marginalized. And again, we have to figure out how to do that, who's going to do it, where is the time going to be to do it. But we also know that a lot of the traditional offerings that come along with school are not necessarily the types of things that traditionally marginalized students participate in or engage in. We want to continue to focus on relationships through inclusive classrooms, through advisory, through Block 5. And that's an area that I feel we are doing quite well. And I would say even the students are struggling. It's amazing to me how respectful a lot of our students who maybe this just isn't working for them will be with us. And I think the relationship that we have with our students and with our community is very strong. Obviously, it shows up in terms of the panorama data that I talked about earlier, but it also shows up in a lot of small ways. Students that will send me an email that says, got out of bed a little late this morning, Mr. Frog, but I'm going to be there. Other students who feel comfortable coming down to the office and accessing us for whatever it is they happen to need. Using our school counselors who are doing a very, very good job to get their needs met, get what they need. Obviously, the relationship with our mental health clinicians is strong. And if we had more, we probably have even more strong relationships. We are continuing to look at collaborative and multidisciplinary courses. We have a new course next year in the course catalog, which is a morning program, which is a combination at least of English and social studies. It came out of the collaboration that occurred around the two individuals who did the maple surfing together. Early indicators are that students are interested in that particular course. So we'll keep looking at those things. I'm pushing those concepts. There's a lot of tradition in our school, which is very positive, but it's helping people understand that maybe there's other ways to instruct this as well. We have to identify student needs that are manifesting as school avoidance, and we have to systemically address those needs. We have to have a place for those kids to go in our building, in our community, that allows them to be successful. And for a lot of those students, if we're not addressing the mental health needs first, we're never going to get to the academic needs. I think, and again, this maybe is where I may be the lone voice in this room in terms of my personal opinion about this, but I believe it is the school's responsibility. We are the only ones that have direct access to these students from the moment they walk in our doors to the moment they leave at night. If we can get them in the door, we have a fighting chance. But they're not going to come in the door unless we're ready to support their mental health needs. So when we have students who are struggling with their mental health, it doesn't do it a darn bit of good for us to look at that student and say, it's time to go to math class. So we have to create something that sits in partnership with what we're doing, but that provides an alternative that is a little bit deeper in terms of the mental health supports. And that's what the last bullet talks about, providing an in-house therapeutic setting through the ILC. And I believe we can do it. It's not overwhelming to me. I can see a path forward. But it is a different way of thinking about school.
Yeah.
I know there'll be some in our community that may, I don't know how many people watch this thing, but who may be wondering about that. Because I think you can look at school and you can say,
Yes.
well, school is about academics. And if that's the case, then I would talk to you again. I'm going to end where I began. There's a statement that I'm very proud of that this district has called the district commitment. And then I'm also going to reference the district shared vision. And that statement, that word, the first word, which is all. We're ready to do that work.
I have a comment. I happen to know of a child.
Questions?
I'm trying to
Go ahead,
talk to you,
Nancy.
Coach.
Poor Nancy.
Go ahead, Nancy.
Thank you. I happen to know a student that's in our high school that has struggled their entire school career. And struggle, I mean, struggle really hard. This year, this student, one of the classes that this student takes is physics. When I heard this child was going to take this class, I said, thinking to myself, what? I've watched this student struggle to the point of just being in tears for hours at a time. This student came to me and says, guess what? For the first time that this student has been in our school system forever, made the honor roll. Made the honor roll. And you know what that student's favorite class is? Physics. And I said, why? What makes this class so that you, of all the students in this school, like? It's the teacher. The teacher gets me. This teacher works with me and thinks the way that I think so I can communicate with them and I understand what this teacher is saying to me. I think that says a whole lot for a number of these students, well, most of our, probably all, but at least most of our teachers. And I think that says a lot, and it really said a lot to me to think about that and to think that because of the struggles that this student has had the past 11 years, that that to keep them in school and to get them to school has always been the struggle. And yet one teacher made all the difference in the world.
We found pretty consistently that you don't have to have a perfect day. You have to have one great class. And again, that's not our goal,
Right.
you know, but if a kid wakes up in the morning and knows I have to go to school today because I need to see Mr. Ellison in a physics class.
Yep.
Or I need to go to school today because I need to see somebody in the ILC.
Mm-hmm.
That will get kids there that are able to get there. There are some that are going to struggle, but to get there at all.
Mm-hmm.
And that we have this incredible breadth of students and their abilities and I'm not talking about their grades, I'm talking about their innate abilities, but it's incredible breadth of students and it's rich, and we need to have the same breadth of service that meets them where they are. Again, I think we can do that.
Thanks, Nancy. Other members? Questions? Olivia.
Oh, Olivia, go ahead.
Go ahead, Olivia.
And Mr. Fogg, thank you so much for doing this presentation. I really agree with what you had said about the tale of two schools, and I am very much on one of those halves of the school. And so to find out that 16% of my peers were missing 20 or more days of school was absolutely shocking. But I was wondering with this year in particular, how many of those absences were due to systemic barriers or anxiety or school avoidance and things like that? And how many of them were due to COVID-related reasons, like testing positive, needing to quarantine, having a family member who's sick, things like that?
It's a great question. I think the number of students who missed school because of COVID, we're talking about the first semester, very few of those students reached 20. That's a high number. Right? At one point, we were telling students to, I think, be out of school for 10 days, maybe, if you tested positive. So I don't know exactly the percentage, but I can tell you that I chose the number 20 specifically knowing that it's not a group of students who were missing 20 days because of COVID.
Thank you.
Yeah, it's a good question.
Hava?
Yeah, I just have two things. One is, thank you for answering my first question already, which is what do you say to parents or Hartford residents who say, this is the job of the parents to be taking care of kids' mental health, not the job of the schools. And I think you answered that beautifully by talking about our commitment to all students.
I think it's all of our jobs.
Yes.
And I think unfortunately, a lot of our parents need the same level of support that their children need. And when that happens, it's interesting, Rick mentioned how taxed HCRS is.
Yeah,
And we're seeing that obviously on the kids side of things.
sure.
We're also seeing it on the parent side of things. Adults who otherwise might be able to access mental health supports through HCRS, the door's been shut. There's no support. They can't do that. So we're seeing that both ways.
Thank you. And really thanks for that explanation because, and I'm thinking of one person in particular, we have coffee about once a month to talk about stuff like this. So she knows who she is out there. And the second thing I am wondering about is the therapeutic setting. When you're talking about the ILC becoming a therapeutic environment in the school, are you talking about it being culturally a therapeutic environment, or are you talking about recreating a therapeutic school program with the ILC?
Yeah, I think right now our plan would be that the ILC is that Swiss Army knife. So the ILC itself isn't necessary. It's a very supportive program.
Mhm.
It is not necessarily a therapeutic program, and it won't be for all. The therapeutic classroom will likely be a space under the umbrella of the ILC, which will serve specific students, those who have, if we can get them in the door, again, those who may be avoiding school, but also those for whom there is a lot of social anxiety around going to this class or that class. Maybe it's a larger class versus a smaller class, but having somebody in the space that can support them, having it be a small number of students. One of the biggest contributors to the anxiety is the number of students that you come in contact with. And again, that has become such an issue after the last 2 years when you just weren't seeing anybody.
Right.
So I think the ILC will be expanded, to say that.
Thanks for that.
So to expand on that just a little bit, Nelson, thinking in terms of the ILC and the students that are affected, by that approach, I know that we've invested a lot of time and effort over the years with Play-Doh, and that's become a very useful tool, but I haven't seen it mentioned lately. Is that just because it's so embedded,
Yeah, so the online, I mentioned it in the slide around our online learning, that it happens out of the ILC. That's the Adventum tool, which used to be called Play-Doh. So yeah, it's the same thing. We still have a number of students who are choosing an online option for a lot of different reasons.
Well, thinking more in terms of, like you said, meeting them where they are, because that's the key, you know, and the teachers that are able to do that are the ones that have that effect that Nancy was talking about. You know,
Yes.
and we know that for fact. And you know, and I commend you and your team at the high school, because numbers don't lie. You know, the national average is 52%. And then we're at 72% as far as the relationships between our teachers and our students versus the national average. You know, that speaks volumes, you know, and I guess because we are who we are, being Hartford, we want to see it higher,
Sure.
because we want to see better results even. So thank you for that.
Any other questions?
Yes, and I'm not sure there's an answer to it.
Those are the best kinds of questions.
The problem as I see it is that our schools do not function independent of our community and our society. And if the children we are dealing with are being hurt this badly, it's not just that they are springing de novo into the world and only exposed to the schools are the only impact on them, and the problems are only the fault of the schools. This is representative of a larger societal problem, and that we collectively seem to be failing our children, and more likely each other as well. The rates of opioid use in this area are extraordinarily high. We are having a fierce conversation in the town right now what to do with people who are homeless. And most of these people are people who have mental issues of one kind or another, who have been abused by a system which can make anybody, no matter how successful they are, bankrupt and homeless, with one case of bad luck and bad health, in which climate change is a real and not accepted by everybody issue that we are failing to deal with. There are forces of all kinds playing on these children. And if our society is expecting that the only avenue for addressing their needs is the schools, we've got a big problem. So how do we reach out to the society, both at the local level and larger state and national levels, to start to get us all to reflect on what we're doing to each other?
Oh, you preface that by saying there's probably not an answer, so the easiest thing for you to do would be to turn and walk out the door.
Yeah, Nelson, what do you got to say for us here? Come on.
This isn't an answer, Peter, and everything you said is absolutely true. I know what we say as a district. You started there, I started there with my presentation. I don't have control over most of what happens in our students' lives. I have no control. I want them to be able to access their education, all of them, each and every one of them. And I know that for some, the barriers are significant. They're not ours. We didn't create them. Make no mistake about it. But I also, again, I come back to what sort of is the conversation nationally, which is our schools have to become learning centers, centers for wellness, centers for health. And if that's where we can get these services to kids, because they can't get them anywhere else. You know, I'm reminded, and again, I happens to be a gentleman who I respect a great deal, a gentleman named Jeffrey Canada, who started something called the Harlem Children's Zone. And he started with how many square blocks of Harlem, and every kid in that square block area was going to get an education. And then he realized, well, I can't do that unless I also educate their parents. And I can't do, so all of a sudden, the Harlem Children's Zone was built to, they are the wellness center, they are the health center, they start talking with the parents when the children are in utero, and they have baby college, and they do, again, at some level, it's successful on a very, very small scale, much bigger than ours, but on a small scale. I think we have to consider that there may be things that we are not doing that we could be doing that would bring those services to our students, and not apologize for the fact that society of which we live and we're a part of is doing this. I'm not an apologist for any of it, but how do we become a stronger partner at the table when we start talking about these things that are, if we believe all, right? I mean, that's why I started where I started. It was very purposeful. If we believe all, if that's the statement that we are going to hang around, that's what we're going to tell our community. That's what I'm going to tell our students. What I used to say to my colleagues when I had children in the school, and we, by the way, this isn't a new thing. Right? I mean, my daughters are all way out of high school. But I would see that there were students that weren't getting served. And I always asked our teachers, challenged our teachers, are we comfortable if that's somebody else's child? Would we be comfortable if it's our child? And the reality is, and you brought this up very, very well, Peter, all of our children are being impacted by it. It doesn't matter whose family they go home to. It doesn't matter what college they go to. They are being impacted by what's going on in this world. And again, I can only control a very little bit of it, but I feel like we are ready, and as a district, we may not get to all, but let's work to get closer to all, make that a really lofty and inspiring goal. And that's why I love working for this district, why I trust Tom and Roy and Kathy and you folks, because I believe that's where our partnership is.
I have to agree. The idea of all is totally radical. This is not where education has ever been. Education has always performed a weeding function. And the children who did not make it through school were ignored. And the children who did not proceed to the next level were ignored. And that was a way in which it was designed to function. So by saying, oh, we are doing something different and radical.
And I for one am old enough, so I couldn't do it any other way. At this point in my life, I mean, what would be the point? Because I can't, when they walk in the door in the morning or don't, I can't look and say, well, yeah, probably not. You're gonna be great. How do we? There's a moral imperative that's required when you say all, and I think that this district has that moral imperative, and I'm proud to be part of it, and hopefully continue to push in some small way towards more.
Thank you.
Good question. And great answer, Nelson. Again, I do appreciate, the efforts. The Harlem project that you mentioned, there were, let's say, similar projects and programs around the country that did basically the same thing. They took that holistic approach, and when I say holistic, I mean holistic. It was the whole community was involved in raising and nurturing each other and their kids. And when you look at those models similar, to that model, that's what was happening. And so with varying degrees, different styles, but at the end of the day, they were all working towards that same end, knowing full well that that's the hybrid, and I guess that's what we're working towards, Hartford's own hybrid, and that's okay. That's really okay, at least personally from my perspective. So keep up the good work, folks.
Thank you.
Thanks,
Thanks,
Nelson.
Nelson.
Thank you so
Thank-
much.
So I guess we're at that community point. Do we have folks on? I can't. At least I'm showing there. Right. I see a few.
No questions, Coach.
Okay. So any other comments from the board?
Just a quick follow-up that at the next engagement meeting, which is the second meeting in April, we will have the middle school, White River School, the Ottaquechee School.
Wilder.
I think
Wilder.
the School's gonna wait
Oh, okay.
for another
And,
meeting.
and the middle school, all the rest of
And the
them.
tech center,
Tech
yeah,
center.
the career center.
Right. And we can do that one separately. Wilder School.
Yeah, he, because it's so new for him, he's trying to figure
Right.
out what his report will be, and he also he's working on an open house. While COVID is sort of lower rates, trying to have an open house for all of you that he promised when opened, we haven't been able to do. And so
Yep.
I don't know if we pair the two activities together or not, but we'd love to get the board over there to see what the building looks like now and what's going on inside of it. So sort of an ends plus.
We could all put GoPros on our heads and walk around that meeting, just saying, that could be nice.
Maybe we have a special board meeting at the school and then do a tour or here. A lot of great stuff going on, and it's just in its infancy, but we'd love to show you.
Well, had a chance to talk with a few folks, and I know what we were working towards, in that effort, and again, it was a community effort. The fact that Hartford came together with the work of the team to not just do a physical construction, but just that whole community effort was pretty astounding. Just looking at that end product. I had a chance to go over, before we actually opened the doors, and it was just amazing. It was almost like the phoenix rising out of the ashes. Quite a phenomenal process. But anyways, that being said,
We do
things
have
that are meant to be.
we do have one person who's got the hand raised, I think.
We do. Nope,
Mhm.
all over. We're all good.
Yep.
Okay, Brianna, you can unmute and you're ready to go.
Cool.
Thank you. Good evening, everybody. This is Bree on Goodspeed. I just wanted to say a quick thank you to the two principals who presented tonight. I thought that was excellent. It was really informative to hear. I really look forward to hearing from the other principals. So I just want to say thank you for sharing all that information. It's just great to be able to sit in and listen to it.
Thank you, Brian.
Thanks, Brian.
No
That's
problem.
why we do it.
Yep.
So it's working, and the good thing is anybody, having an interest can always go back, to, the recordings, because it's an archive. It's an archive of all of this work, and that's pretty critical. So, just a technical question for you, Tom. Did we share the information from the last board meeting with the town as far as our selection for the charter group? Did we approve?
Yes.
Okay.
I thought so, but I will make sure.
Well, the thing is, I kind of know you did. And the reason I say I kind of know is because they said at the meeting they were waiting for us. So at their meeting. So it's like,
All right, well, I will share it again right after tonight's meeting, or
Yeah.
share it.
Yeah. Well,
So much is
Sherry?
happening.
No, Sherry's raising her hand.
Sherry wants to
But
come
she's
in.
muted.
We're not
She's
hearing.
she's a panelist. She doesn't need.
Can they move her up to, because she's got our minutes, and I think that's what she was going to refer to. So if we can elevate her to panelist, that would be great.
I think she already
She
is.
is a panelist, coach.
Okay.
Sherry, are you muted?
No,
No, I can't hear her.
she's
Can't
not
hear
muted. You can't see the little mute mic.
Yep.
Or mic. Microphone.
She's unmuted, but we can't hear her. It must be
Yeah.
on her.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
Sorry, Sherry, we can't hear you, but maybe you could either text me or email me.
Hmm.
I will.
It's
say
her
it for
computer
you.
Or
microphone.
put it in the chat.
Or put it in the
Yeah.
chat.
Share
Good
that
question,
function.
good point.
Yeah.
Even better.
See, I think she was referring back to the minutes of that meeting.
How about now?
Yeah.
Okay, there she is.
Okay. All right. So in your reorganizational meeting on March 9th, you did not include in your minutes to have Gabriel Luke, Michelle Boleski, and FX Flynn as your charter commission. That was not included on your list. Somebody talked about it before, but when the list came up and you moved the list, they weren't there.
Okay, if then, for whatever reason, that oversight, because I know I was the one that mentioned the three
Mhm.
for the charter commission.
Yeah.
So what I would like to do at this point, if we can have a motion to approve our,
Move that the list
Okay.
just given us be appointed for the respective jobs that we'd already talked about.
Nancy seconds.
so we have a motion and a second to approve the three members from the school boards voting for the charter commission. Two past board members, being Michelle Bileski and Gabrielle Luke, and then the combined member being FX Flynn. That being said, all in favor? Aye. Opposed? So moved. So it was a 4-0-1 vote. And then we can get that to them and move this process forward. We might have said to them just what we said. We've been talking about this for like 2 meetings, so we didn't.
Yeah, it could be my fault with everything going on, but I will.
No.
send
No.
an email now. I thought we took care of
Yeah.
it, but maybe
Yeah.
I didn't.
No, well, that's up to us. It's a board process, so it's collective. So now we know, everybody here knows it was done. There is no question.
All right,
Okay,
unless there are any other issues we should discuss, I would like to move that we adjourn.
Nancy seconds.
so we have a motion and a second to adjourn the meeting. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? So moved.
Thank you. Have a great night.
You as well.
Good night, everyone.